Hello, everyone. This is Steve Kime with the City of Enid and the Enid Television Network, and we are really gracious to have Senator Jim Inhofe with us today. Senator, welcome to Enid. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you. It's my honor. We had a good crowd out here at this is the best airport restaurant in Oklahoma. I really believe it. People actually come here from multi-states around just to eat here.
And we came earlier for breakfast, so we know that testimony is true. Well, again, we appreciate your time, and we just want to give folks in Enid and Northwest Oklahoma an update on what's going on in D.C. Senator, I noticed around the 1st of October, I think it was October 12th, it was National Farmers Day here in the U.S. What can you share, what's going on in Washington, D.C. to help Oklahoma farmers?
I think what we have to understand is that we are in a position right now to really try to help the salt of the earth, and those are the people who are out there growing. You're talking really to the right person about this, because I was honored by the Farm Bureau to be their recipient of their Golden Plow Award, which is the largest award, it's the most significant award that they can have. The biggest problem that the farmers had during the Obama administration was the overregulation. So that the farmers they weren't sure what they could do in their fields. They weren't sure what pesticides they could use. They weren't sure. They had no certainty, and so you had them being accused of having a dirty footprint all over America. And the farmers, if you could single out one group that was hurt more than anybody else during the Obama administration, it was the farmers. And the farmers, people don't understand this. It's not just on ag issues. They are conservatives. They're people who really believe in large people and small government. They're the ones who really want the freedoms and appreciate the freedoms. They're the ones that understand that we don't need government to come out to Garfield County in Oklahoma and say what you should be doing to keep your land unpolluted and all that, because the recognition is that by us, that people who own the land are the ones who are most concerned about keeping it clean, about doing the things that they don't need to have government telling them to. Right. So we now have a hands-off policy where farmers have the freedoms that they have enjoyed in the past. Right now is a good example. They are trying to declare the liberals, in fact, the Edmondson, who's running for governor of Oklahoma, is saying they want to classify cow manure as hazardous waste, and that would force farmers to go out and do things that they should not have to do. And so, anyway, that's the salt of the earth that I love and spend a lot of time with.
Being born and raised in Oklahoma, I certainly can relate to that term, salt of the earth. We don't hear it enough, but I think people know exactly what you mean when you talk about salt of the earth individuals. Senator, can you just provide us a brief synopsis? America's Water Infrastructure Act. Here, it's difficult for me to pronounce. What in the world is that?
Well, first of all, the word of bill is WRDA. That's Water Resources Development Act. Okay. Every 2 years we pass it. We passed it in fact, I was the author, so you're talking to the right person right now. We passed it in 2014, 2016, and we just passed it last week, 2018. And that is to take the water resources that we have in the state of Oklahoma and manage them in a way that they can maximize the use. I'll give you a good example. In Bartlesville, Oklahoma, they had come along and said that in order to use the water, and frankly, I can't remember the name of the lake now.
Probably
source.
Copan Lake.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's right. Well, and we now are in a position to bring that down to about 1/4 the increase in cost it would have been otherwise, because they don't have the resources to do that. The same thing is true in down in on the border, and so all around the state you see things that we need to do to further utilizing the water. A good example also would be, and here we are up in a part of the state that's a long ways away from the navigation way, but nonetheless, your grain goes down there. That's how you get to market. And we are facing a problem in what they call three rivers. That is, there is a river that's coming into the navigation way that could do away with it from Arkansas all the way up here to in Oklahoma. And that is an issue that we dealt with last week in the WRDA bill. Another one we did that affects the navigation way is the 12-foot channel. Right now, about 90% of the channel is a 12-foot channel, but if you have only 10% that's a 9-foot channel, that wipes out all the deep channels. So we are on schedule to make that a reality. Again, that was in the Water Resources bill that we just passed last week.
Senator Inhofe, we always appreciate your leadership in regards to military and the role Advance plays here in Enid and Northwest Oklahoma. We appreciate your leadership on the committees there in D.C. This may be somewhat of an unfair question, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate today our military preparedness? Or our strength, I should say.
Well, I would say, you can word it anyway, it's about 50%.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. We had, and again, I always, back during the 8 years of Obama, I said to his face, I said, I appreciate the fact that you are an honest liberal. You're not a hypocrite. You really, and he didn't have a high regard for the military. And for that reason, we dropped behind our peer adversaries, which are China and Russia, in many areas, and people are not aware of it. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff made a statement toward the tail end of the Obama administration that we are outgunned and out-armed by China and by Russia. And and this is what a confession to make by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So this president came along and decided we're going to change this and start rebuilding our military, and we're in the process of doing it. I mentioned a minute ago to my friends that were here in Enid at the airport that it wasn't long ago, just a few weeks ago, I was in the South China Sea. We were watching the Chinese building islands out in the South China Sea for huge armaments. They're as if they're preparing for World War III. Our allies out there are looking at that, thinking that that's what China's doing. If it's World War III, whose side are we going to be on? So that's what happened to our military. We're now rebuilding our military, and we're going to get now so that our Army brigades, we were down to 30% of them couldn't even be deployed. This is back during the Obama administration because of the maintenance, the poor maintenance that we had. So we are now rebuilding it, and I would say that while we're growing now, if you were to ask the same question you just asked me, where are we going to be a year from now, we're going to be right up around 90%. We're rapidly rebuilding our military, and no one could be more sensitive to that than people just around this area because of the activity that they see at Advance.
Senator, the word that we're hearing here at Vance from 300 pilots being trained to 350 plus, what kind of message does that send to Americans? And we know other bases are ramping up more training and so forth, but what do you think that message conveys to all of us here in the U.S. with the increase in training?
Well, they recognize that during the 8 years of Obama, we actually had a reduction, and we had a real pilot shortage that we still have today. One of the problems there is, of course, we're competing with the airline industry. They need pilots also, but we think, you need to stop and think what it costs. It starts right out here at Vance, and as they progress along, it's upwards of somewhere around $17 million for a pilot to be qualified in let's say 35, so that's a very expensive thing. And we are now, in the reason for the fact that we lost so many pilots during that administration is the president at that time, Obama, was not spending the money on sustaining and building the Air Force as well as the Navy. Now that's reversed, and now we're doing it. The problem was our pilots were only being able to fly about 8 to 10 hours a month. And it should be 24 hours a month. And I know a little bit about flying airplanes because I've been a pilot for over 60 years. And these kids that get in there, they want to fly airplanes. They don't want to sit around and fly 8 hours a month. They want to be flying airplanes. So that's what is happening right now. So out here at Vance, we're starting, and I gave the actual figures. It's increasing. The number of pilots that we're going to crank out are increasing by about 15% a year. And so this is where it's happening. We're correcting that problem and getting it behind us.
Senator, many individuals still watch cable news or major news networks, and it seems like after all the theater of the nomination for Judge Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court seat, it just seemed like it was theater. My question is, what's the mood? How is the mood after all of this is done? What is the mood in D.C. after this?
Well, that was 100% partisan. You had one, Kavanaugh. First of all, Judge Kavanaugh, he's been on the bench now. He was first put on the bench in 2006, and I was there as a part of the team that was putting him into office. So we got to know him back then, and nothing has changed. He's a sterling character. Well, they came along with this lady named Ford, and she made accusations against him, things that he allegedly did, and they mentioned witnesses that were out there. None of the witnesses ever showed up. In fact, her best friend, who was also a witness, admitted that she didn't know, she never even met the guy, Kavanaugh. So the tragedy of that is we've had historically, since the founding of this country, a presumption of innocence. You're innocent until proven guilty. This is the reverse of that. So you had one lady and then ultimately 3 people making accusations that I know are not true about this individual, and they were assuming that they're true. Well, you can't. No witnesses were there to do that. So to me, that was the real crime. It had really very little to do with Kavanaugh. The Democrats said no matter who the President Trump nominates to be a Supreme Court justice, we will fight to the bitter end to oppose him. Now, they didn't know it was going to be Kavanaugh when they made that decision. Well, they just don't want to have constitutionalists running this the judiciary, and I do. So that didn't really answer your question. I can remember back when we had another judge that was accused of things not too many years ago, and everyone thought, well, they'll never get this system back together where they're speaking to each other. That lasted about a month, and it was all over. So it's back to business as usual.
Very good. Let's change the topic and let's talk about unemployment. I believe in a presentation that you made earlier, you mentioned unemployment is close to 3.7%, the lowest it's been since maybe the 60s, forever ago. What do you attribute the low numbers to?
Well, it's to 2 things. And it was partisan. One is the reduction in the rates. And I was quick to say to this group that was here in Enid I was talking to, this was not a Republican notion to start with. This was President Kennedy, who back in 1962 said we need to have more money to have the Great Society programs that we want to have. That is a very liberal cause. He said the best way, this is not me talking, this was Kennedy talking. He said the best way to increase revenue is reduce marginal rates. And so they reduced the 91% rate to 70%. And unfortunately, the president was assassinated 2 years after that. But he wasn't there to see his dream come true, that it did increase dramatically the revenue by the amounts that he was predicting. And then the same thing happened in 1981, 1986. And of course, that's what this president is doing now. He's reducing the marginal rates, and that increases economic activity. And for each 1% of increase in economic activity, that translates into $2.9 trillion over a period of 20 years. And so that's what he's doing to get the revenue in to rebuild the military and also do the other thing we're supposed to be doing in Washington, that is our infrastructure and our roads, highways, and infrastructure. So that prosperity is there because of one man who wanted to do 2 things to make it happen. Number 1, reduce the marginal rates. And number 2, do away with all these regulations that puts people out of business. So that's what's happening today, and we'll all be benefit from it.
Very good. This is a two-part question, Senator, and it's my last question. The first part is, what will you focus on? What will the Senate focus on for the remainder of the year here in 2018? And what word of encouragement can you say to all of us here in Enid, Northwest Oklahoma, and just really around the U.S. that will watch this interview? So that's kind of my two-part question, and that's
first
it.
First of all, let me single out the other senator from Oklahoma, James Langford. I have to say that he is brilliant. He is the best thing that ever happened to me, to have a junior senator who is as smart as he is and who is as conservative. And I can't tell you how much better my life is to have him as a partner.
We'll make sure that we send that part of the clip and interview to his office.
Well, you make sure to do that because everybody knows it. In fact, I've introduced him many times as saying, well, James Langford is, I admit he's smarter than I am. We make a great pair because with his IQ and my perseverance, we get things done. So that's good. Around here and around America, the thing that we're going to be doing when we get back into session is starting to rebuild the military. Rebuilding the military is the most important single thing that we can do. You know, the people of the world the people of our country assume that America has the best of everything, the best rolling stock, the best artillery, the best, and that's not true. It was true, but it's not true now, and we're getting it rebuilt now. I happen to be a little bit partial because I chair the committee called the Senate Armed Services Committee, and I want to make sure that we have a military that is second to none, and we're rapidly getting there. But there's another function that we are supposed to be doing, that's infrastructure. Actually, both of these things are in the in the Constitution in terms of what we, our members of the United States Senate and the House, are supposed to be doing in Washington. Number one, defending America, and number two, building infrastructure. Actually, in the Constitution, they called them post roads back then. So those are the two major things that are taking place right now. It's going to be taking place when we go back into session after the election, and those are the areas to rebuild and what we're supposed to be doing in Washington, and we're going to do it. And we have a president. You know, I know so many people don't like Trump, and he's brash. He's easy to dislike. But when you stop and realize what he's done, look at the economy we've had. We haven't seen an economy like this, since the 60s, as you point out. And yet, this is what's going on right now, and this is a guy that came from nowhere, didn't have any political background. It's kind of like it is with Kevin Stitt, who's running for governor of Oklahoma. He's never been in politics before. He's never run for office before, but has been a success in the free enterprise business. He's been successful as Donald Trump has been. So that's something that I'm hoping that we see as it become a reality after the next election.
Very good. Senator, thank you for what you do for the state of Oklahoma and also for Enid, Oklahoma and Vance Air Force Base. And we just appreciate your effort. You're one individual that has a very large office. And thank goodness you have a plane that you can fly around and stay in touch with everyone. So thank you for your time today. We appreciate it.
It's my honor.
And we wish you the best. And we thank you for joining us today and hope you enjoyed our insight. And we're always gracious and appreciative to Senator Inhofe to be gracious with his time to keep us this updates. Every few months we're able to come back and provide you the latest on what's going on in Washington, D.C. For the City of Enid and the Enid Television Network, I'm Steve Kime. Thanks for watching. Make it a great day.